Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All gurus, Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Hemangi Mataji, when you're ready, you can start, Mataji.
Sure, Babaji. Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Today we are reading Canto 3, Chapter 31, text 37 to 48. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nastyaprayesu Abhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Text 37. Amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayana is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. Text 38. Just try to understand the mighty strength of Maya in the shape of woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. One who aspired to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate it with an attractive woman, for such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. The woman created by the Lord is the representation of Maya, and one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death, just like a blind whale covered with grass. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, he has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of man, her husband, as the bester of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. For text 42. A woman therefore should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be an arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. Due to his particular type of body, the materialistic living entity wanders from one planet to another, following fruitive activities. In this way, he involves himself in fruitive activities and enjoys the result instantly. Text 44. In this way, the living entity gets a suitable body with a material mind and senses, according to his fruitive activities. When the reaction of his particular activities comes to an end, that end is called death. And when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth. Text 45 to 46. When the eyes lose their power to see color or due to the morbid affliction of the optic nerve, the sense of sight becomes deadened. The living entity who is the seer of both the eyes and the sight loses his power of vision. In the same way, when the physical body, the place where perception of objects occurs, is rendered incapable of perceiving, that is known as death. When one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body as soul, nor give away the exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose, endowed with the right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity. One should relegate his body to his illusionary world through his reason. Thus, one can be unconcerned with this material world. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Yeah, when you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji. Krishna and Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. Am I audible, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Clear, Prabhuji.
Okay, thank you. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणि निर्विशेषशून्यवादि पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणि। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Thank you all for joining today's Bhagavatam call. Thank you, Namanga Mataji, for reading translations. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, title Lord Kapila's Instructions on the Movements of the Living Entities. And just to give a background, so we heard in the previous chapter how Kapila Bhagavan replied Mother Deva's questions to know about the continuous process of birth and death, so which includes all the miseries. And he explained how a living entity goes through so much suffering in this world to maintain himself and the family. Sometimes he will earn the money through an illegal way, and for that he suffers. Then he continues that suffering through the old age with many diseases. And since he became old, his own family member will not give respect, though he has supported all the family members in the past. Then how he goes through suffering while leaving the body, and then how he goes through the various types of punishments while going to the hellish planets due to his sinful activities. And then we hear like many kinds of sufferings. And in this chapter we heard so far how the living entity gets another body based on his previous karma under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, Karmana Daiva Nitrena. So then he speaks about, Kapila Bhagavan speaks about how the living entity enters into the womb of a mother, and he was very small at that time. And he explains how the body, the small body grows as day progresses, time progresses within the womb of the mother. Then he talks about how the baby suffers in the womb because that's not a comfortable place. And due to that unbearable suffering, so sometimes he falls unconscious, and some fortunate souls, they remember the past lives, and then they pray to the Supreme Lord that they will take up the this process of bhakti seriously this time. But as soon as the living entity comes into this material world, then he loses that superior knowledge, and then he starts crying under the spell of Maya. And then we heard from Kapila Bhagavan how the baby, as he is growing in this material world, how he suffers when he was very small, how he suffers being bitten by the worms, and then as the body grows, how his false prestige and then anger increases. Due to that, he creates enmity with the similar people, and how he indulge in sense gratification activities. Because of that, he will continue the birth and death, which is the suffering only. And out of that indulge the sense gratification, Kapila Bhagavan mentions that this opposite gender attraction is very powerful. And he gave in the last sloka 37 that even Lord Brahma he was bewildered by her charms and shameless by his own daughter. So giving this example, he tells how the opposite gender attraction is very powerful in this material world. And then he continuing that today. So he is mentioning, Kapila Bhagavan mentioned that in this material world, so whoever is created by Lord Brahma, like, either man or demigods or animals, but this all are attracted by the opposite gender attraction except sage Narayana. So, and Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the first living entity in this material world is Lord Brahma, And from him, the great sages came, some Prajapatis, and then from those great sages, some other Prajapatis like Kashyap Prajapati, those comes, and from Kashyap Prajapati, like we hear the demigods appeared. Of course, there are other creations started from those Prajapatis, but all of them are attracted by the opposite gender attraction. So it's very powerful. Of course, we have some examples in the scriptures also, like how Indra got attracted by the beauty of Ahalya, or how Vishwamitra, just by hearing the ankle bells of Manaka, so his tapasya got disturbed. And then he got attracted to Manaka once he opened his eyes. Then similarly, we hear like, the demigod Chandra. So he got attracted to his own guru's wife. His guru is Bruhspati and his wife is Tara. So he got attracted to Tara, and from that opposite gender association, we hear the moon god dynasty started like that. So that's a Prabhupada mentions in the purport that in this material world, the wonderful creation of Maya is woman, or the opposite gender attraction. So that's how the conditioned souls are bound in this material world. So, and Prabhupada gives example in one of the lectures. Prabhupada says that even when somebody becomes old, so even though the body is not suitable for the opposite gender association, still the desires are there. So that's why even the old people, they goes to nightclubs. He mentioned this in Paris. Of course, this is everywhere. So instead of, at the age of advanced age or old age, instead of chanting or practicing the spirituality, so people, by the deep attraction of the opposite gender action, they goes to the nightclubs like that. And then in the next sloka, Kapila Bhagavan is mentioning that try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of woman. So by mere movements of her eyebrows, when the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. And Prabhupada gives example in the purport. So there are many instances in the history. He gives example of Cleopatra. So one of a beautiful woman who conquered several great kings. So with her beauty and charm. And Prabhupada mentioned that in the olden days, so sometimes if a king wants to kill his enemy king, so then he sends prostitutes so that they will attract that king, and those prostitutes will somehow or other feed the poison to the enemy king, and then they will kill like that. So of course this is not only in the olden days, even in the modern days also. I heard from a friend that some of the politicians of US government, so they are enticed by the prostitutes by Chinese government to grab the information, the secret information of US government. So not the US government politicians, but many country politicians, they are enticed by prostitutes or women to get their country's secrets, the information. So it's very, very powerful attraction. And we hear one pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arranges this pastime so that one can understand the power of the opposite gender attraction, or how the strength of the Maya. Like when Mahaprabhu is touring South India, he had a servant called Kala Krishna Das. So at one place in South India, there is a sector called Bhattaharis. So these Bhattaharis, of course, they also do some kind of practices of yoga or some kind of like that. But these Bhattaharis, to increase their population or number, so what they do is they will send women to others, outsiders. And then those women will attract those outsiders. And then those outsiders will join in their community. So that's how the Bhattaharis community will increase. That's one way. So this Kala Krishna Das was also tricked like that. and Kala Krishna Das got attracted by this Bhattari's group woman, and he started associating with them. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saves him from that. But Mahaprabhu, with this pastime, stresses the general people, all of us, that the power of opposite gender attraction. Even though he is in the association of the Supreme Lord, so there is a chance to fall down. So that's why one should be very, very careful. Because the opposite gender attraction is very deep rooted. And that's why Kapila Bhagavan is mentioning here that one who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga, as realized, so they should avoid the association of the woman. Because it's declared that association is the gateway to hell for the advanced devotees. And Prabhupada mentions that the culmination of yoga is Krishna consciousness. So Bhakti Yoga, because Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita that Yoginam api sarvesham madgatyantara atmana. Like, out of all the yogis, who is the best is the one who does the Krishna conscious practice or Bhakti Yoga. So that is the opinion of Supreme Lord Krishna. Of course, that is the what scriptures stresses. So one who is trying to progress in the path of bhakti, they should avoid the association of the woman or opposite gender, because it will deviate him from the path of bhakti. So we heard yesterday from Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu, very nice example of Ajamila. So though he was a very nice person, but just by seeing one woman and man very closely mingling, so he got fell down from the Brahmanical position. So that's the power of attraction. Even one Bhagavatam mentions that it takes one step further, Bhagavatam, to stress the why we need to be away from the association of the opposite gender. Bhagavatam says that even one should not associate with their own mother or sister or daughter very closely, because the senses are so strong. Not that one attracts to his mother or sister or daughter, but it is the point is to stress the vileness of the senses. Balavan indriyo gramo, like the senses are very strong. It's not just for a ignorant person or very ordinary personality. Bhagavatam stress that vidvamsam api karshati, even for the people who are in knowledge, so they also get attracted by this opposite gender attraction. So one should be very careful because it leads to the hell. So that's why we should be very careful. Prabhupada mentions that the reason is some sect of spiritual practitioners, so-called spiritual practitioners, they say that when one is in active status, when the senses are actively working, then you indulge in sense gratification as much as you can. At the same time, you become yogi. Like both things can go like that. But we see here that it's not that the case, because the association of the opposite genders lead one to the hell. They will not become a yogi. And Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, like Trividam Narakasyedam Dwaram Nasanam Atmanaha. So three things. What are these things? Kama, Krodha, Tadha, Lopas. So those three things, lust, anger, greed, they are the three gateways to hell. So one should try to give up those things, because they are directing the personality to the hell. And out of these three also, the lust is the root cause. Because when one's lust is not fulfilled, then he will become angry, Krodha. If it is fulfilled, then he becomes greedy. He wants more and more and more. So that's why Krishna suggests to cut down this lust, especially the opposite gender attraction, with the weapon of knowledge and then sincere practice, sadhana. Because I'm talking to myself. So in the sloka 40, we see that Kapila Bhagavan is mentioning that the woman created by the Lord, so representation of the Maya, associates with such Maya by accepting service must certainly know that this is the way of death. And gave the example like blind well covered with the grass. And Prabhupada mentions that sometimes it happens that a well which is rejected or not used, so they will cover by grass. And suppose an unknown person who is going in that direction, so he doesn't know that there is a well here because it is covered by grass. So if he goes in that direction and then he steps into that grass, then he will fall down into that well. And then certainly he will die if nobody saves. So similarly, a sadhaka who is practicing the spirituality, Krishna consciousness, and whose aim is to go back home, back to Godhead. So if he associates with the opposite gender, then his progress, his spiritual progress will be checked. And he will not be able to reach the goal of the human life, to go back home, back to Godhead. So instead, sometimes, like Ajamela, he indulged in sinful activities. So those sinful activities will lead them to the hell. So the target is to go back home, back to God. But because of this attraction, so one is going towards the hell. So it's entirely opposite. So that's why it is one should be very careful. Of course, one cannot control these senses, mind and senses by themselves. They should divert into Krishna consciousness. So one should be engaged in Krishna consciousness. So we see examples like, Srila Haridas Thakur, when he was enticed by a prostitute. So instead of he being agitated, he being attracted to that prostitute, actually he inspired that prostitute to become a devotee. So because all his senses are engaged in the process of bhakti, or is through the process of bhakti, he became so much purified that so he was not able to, he is not agitated by opposite gender attraction, like Bhakta Tukaram. So all the pure devotees, they are very fixed up in Krishna consciousness that so they can inspire others, not being agitated by the senses. So in the sloka 41, we see that the result of attachment of a woman in his previous life. So, so a man, a husband, endowed with the form of a woman, right? And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that so it appears that in some cases, so a woman is also a man in his previous life, or in her previous life. So in this life she is woman, but in her previous life she might be a man, like she's a man. So because of too much attachment to his wife in that life, so that man became a woman in current life. He got the body of a woman. Because Krishna also mentions in Bhagavad Gita, like, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tejate ante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya sada tat bhava bhavita. Like, so whatever state of being one remembers when he quits the body, so that state he will attain without fail. So if a man is attached to a woman or his wife too much, then naturally he will think about his wife at the time of death. Then in the next life, he will become a woman. So similarly, if a woman thinks about her husband at the time of death, naturally she gets a body of the man. But if the same attachment, both man or woman, if they divert it to Krishna or engage all their senses in Krishna consciousness, then they will go back home, back to Godhead. So that's why it is recommended both husband and wife perform their activities for the pleasure of Krishna instead of satisfying their own senses. So in the sloka 42, Kapila Bhagavan is mentioning that so a woman therefore should consider her husband, her house, children as the arrangement of the external energy and for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. And we heard like how the attachment of a man to his wife or opposite gender leads that man towards hellish. So similarly, that for a woman, attachment to her husband, house, or children, so all those things would also for her own sense gratification would not help them to progress in the path of bhakti or to go back home, back to Godhead. Instead, it will direct to the hellish planet. So that's why both of them should engage or mold their activities towards Krishna or centered with Krishna. Not only both of them, but even in their children, like if they engage them in Krishna conscious activities and whatever the things that they have, like utilize the house for worshipping Krishna, like that, then their life will be successful. Yeah. Otherwise, they will become closer to death or to the hellish planet. Like, Prabhupada in Kapila Bhagavan here gives a sweet swinging of the hunter is death for the deer. So the hunter sings very nicely. The purpose is to attract the deer. If the deer becomes attracted to that sweet singing, then the hunter, it will be in the trap of hunter, then the hunter will kill it. So similarly, a man and woman, they become attracts each other to satisfy their own senses. So then it will cause their destruction. So in the sloka 43, due to his particular type of body, so this living entity, the conditioned living entity wanders from one planet to another and performs the fruitive activities. So in this way, he involves himself in the fruitive activities and enjoy the result incessantly. So we understand that, every living entity gets a particular type of body based on their karma, karmana daiva nitra. And we hear from the scriptures that we have 8.4 million spices, jalaja, navalakshana, like that. We have aquatics, 900,000 type, like that, different, like trees, plants, or animals, birds, insects, beasts, like that. Similarly, human beings. So based on their previous karma, one will get a certain type of body. And also based on their karma, they will be placed into one of the planet. Like we have 14 planet systems, they will be placed in one of the planet system. Like Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, the people who are in mode of goodness, urdhvam gachanti sattva, like that. People who are in mode of goodness, they will be elevated to the higher planetary systems. So people who are in passion, they will be in the middle planetary systems. And people who are in ignorance, they will go into the lower planetary systems or lower species. So, but wherever we go in this universe, one cannot escape this janma mrityu jara vyadhi, like birth, death, old age, disease. So that's why Lord Chaitanya says that, Brahmanda Bhamite, like, people are going through, wandering through this whole universe. But one who is fortunate, Kona Bhagyavan Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasadapaya Bhakti Latapicha. Like, one who is fortunate, so they get the seed of the devotion service by the mercy of the Guru and Krishna. And then if they can take care of that seed of bhakti very nicely through the process of this chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then they can escape from this repeated birth and death. So, and in the text 44, Kapila Bhagavan is saying that, so in this way, the living entity gets the suitable body with the material mind and senses, and when the reactions of his particular activity comes to end, then that's called death. And when other set of reactions starts, then it is called birth. And Prabhupada mentions that from time immemorial, so the living entity travels in different species of life and to different planets, like Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Antarodani, under the spell of Maya. So as soon as one is born, then a particular set of activities will start. And as soon as that particular body is no longer useful and they leave the body, that set of activities are completed, is done. So like that. And in the text 45 and 46, Kapila Bhagavan mentions that so when the physical body is no longer working or invalid, so then the soul will leave the body. So that's called death. And when one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, then that's called birth. So when our current material body is no longer useful and it cannot work, of course, that's a time of ending this the current material body. So then the soul will be moved to another body. Dehantara praptir. That process is called death or transmigration. So similarly, when one gets another body based on their karma, previous karma, then that's called birth. So that time the living entity view the physical body as one's very self. So that's called birth. But otherwise, the spirit soul, which is part and parcel of Krishna, is eternal, Sachidananda. So there is no death and birth like that. It's eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. So in the text 47, Kapila Bhagavan is mentioning that therefore one should not view death with horror. So nor have recourse to define the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the body of necessity life. So realizing the true nature, so one should move about in the world free from the attachment and steadfast in purpose. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that an intelligent person, Sumeyadasaha, they should understand the miserable condition of this material world or the miseries that are coming from their own material body. They should understand. Instead of being afraid or upset, one should look for a permanent solution. So how one can get that permanent solution knowledge? One should approach a self-realized soul and learning from that self-realized soul. Then become a dhira. So that person also will become a self-realized soul. Then they will not be bewildered by a body change or birth or death like that, because he understands the temporariness of this body and the nature of the living entity. And through sincere practice, so they will situate again back to their original constitutional position, so which is serving the Supreme Lord. And that's why Kapil Bhagavan here says that so one should endowed with the right vision and strengthened by devotion service and pessimistic attitude towards material identity. So one should relegate his body to the illusory world through his reason. Thus one can be unconcerned with this material world. And Prabhupada mentions in the purport that there is a word called Samyak Darshanya Buddhaya. So which means that one has to see perfectly, the right vision. So one should understand through the philosophy and logic, like Gnana Chakshusha, the problems of life, that this material world is full of miseries and temporary, like Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. And knowing that the sadhaka or practicing devotee should avoid the sense gratification activities, because they lead to suffering only, or leading to the hellish planets. We saw all the sufferings in the earlier discussions or the of Kapila Bhagavan. And instead of indulging in sense gratification, try to mold our activities connected to Krishna consciousness or devotional activities. So in this way, one should be aloof from the material actions and reactions. So in that way, at the end of this current life, material life, one can go back home, back to Godhead. So that is the best utilization of the human life, because this human life is one gets very rare. This is dullabhamanava janma. So it's very rare, this human life, and which is very important. And also on top of that, the one who has got satsanga, association, that is more rare. So if we can utilize as per Kapila Bhagavan instructions here, like by strengthening our devotion service and looking at the things in the right vision by this powerful spiritual knowledge. So sincerely practicing, then one can go back home, back to Godhead. So that's why Kapila Bhagavan explained all these things so that one can be detached from the material activities and strengthen their spiritual process or practice of Krishna consciousness. Then go back home, back to Godhead. So I'll pause it here. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, thank you so much, Krishna Prabhuji. Wonderful class, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.